to my videos. Now I want to talk about another book series. It's one of the longest running series that I've had. It's called The Book of M. I started it back in, I think it was around 2012, 2013. It takes place around 1920s. Centers on a real life character named Elizabeth Bathory. Elizabeth Bathory was a real person, and she really lived not in the 20s, much before that, but it was she was a countess that believed that she could keep her youth by killing the virgins and bathing in their blood. So she got the nickname Countess Dracula. So Elizabeth Bathory, in my book, in my world, is alive. She, in real life, she was put in her tower. They walled her up, and the only way they figured she was dead was when she stopped eating. So in my book, she is in the tower, and she is walled up, and there's a battle outside, and part of the wall gets torn down, and she looks out, and it's Dracula. He's waging war against humans. So she sees this as a child, and she grows up, and in exile, she's hiding, living out her days in a cabin, but she keeps remembering the vampires and the war that was taking place when she was a child, or when she was younger. And so at her door comes Professor Moriarty, who, with his fight with Sherlock Holmes in the novels, both of them fall from the waterfalls, and Holmes lives and Moriarty's presumed dead. Well, in my book, he lives, and she helps him, nurses him back to health, and together they try to achieve what Bathory failed to do in the first place, was to retain her youth. And she wanted to live forever. So she sets out on a quest. One of the first things she does is she gets the help from a man who inadvertently turns himself invisible. His name's Griffin. He is from H.G. Wells's Invisible Man. And so together they seek out and try to find different creatures from, I guess, mythology or fiction or whatever. But one of them being the Frankenstein monster, another the Phantom of the Opera, the Headless Horseman, and she hires Arsène Lupin to go in and try to find and steal, in some cases, the artifacts that bring these creatures back to life. Well, she does bring Dracula back, and of course Dracula, the first thing he does is overthrow her and takes control for himself. But now on the flip side, we have Van Helsing, who's been seeking vampires ever since the death of Dracula, and he stumbles upon a cabin in the woods in Inverness-shire near Scotland, and he finds Sherlock Holmes, and together he and Holmes set out to try to find Dracula, who they now discover has been brought back to life through a vampire that has told them this. So along the way, they gain momentum and gather teammates, and a lot of them, like Zorro. He is retired and living in Europe, traveling the world, and they run into him, and he ends up aiding them on their quest. And there's so many others, and as the stories go, there's probably, I would say, about 10 books in all. As the stories go, the first 3 volumes cover Holmes and his team. Again, you've got so many characters. Dorian Gray's in there. You've got Professor Challenger, Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn show up, and there's so many public domain characters just come together in this one giant story. And the first 3 volumes are mainly centered on Sherlock Holmes and his group trying to stop what's taking place. Now, the first book is the M Book 1, and that's this one here. And I do have it available now in paperback, first time in paperback and hardback. It is The Uprising. And then the second book I have, M2 and 3, all take place in this time. Then I intended on ending it there, but I can never just end the series. For some reason, I just have to leave it open so I can continue on. And the 4th book is called Sarah. Sarah is a peasant girl who you will see through 1, 2, and 3 but her destiny is greater. In fact, the first person she meets is Dr. Jekyll, and he helps her get away from some vampires. Well, when Jekyll and his friend, who turns into a werewolf, are captured by Dracula's army, the girl is left on her own, where she meets Professor Moriarty, who has resurrected the Frankenstein monster, and they end up taking her in, and then they seek refuge inside a werewolf's camp, where another lady named Felicity takes Sarah under her wing and reveals to her that she has a much greater destiny, because there's a legend of a young woman who will rise up and lead the werewolves to greatness. And so she believes Sarah may be this girl. So she takes Sarah in. And then all through this book, Sarah is here, but you don't see her do anything significantly until the very last book. And in the fourth book, she's on her own. Actually, she's working with the Frankenstein monster and Tom Sawyer in trying to rid the world of vampires, because that's the one thing she hates the most, because they killed her parents. So the fourth book begins that, but also the underlying story is there is a group of scientists that have in the background watched everything taking place over there, and they have set out to do similar things, except it's taking place on Dr. Moreau's island. And you'll see a lot of the scientists from the old pulp magazines and books and novels. And so Sarah gathers up her own group, and she fights against the vampires, and then the scientists are fighting against her. And then the fifth book is the book of Zorro. Zorro lives, he's on his journey to find just solitude. He wants to relax, he wants to continue his retirement, so he's traveling around the world. Of course, trouble always finds him. So he ends up meeting a werewolf, and he ends up passing the torch to his grandson, who ends up carrying on Zorro's tradition. And in the sixth book, it's the Book of Holmes, and that's where everything happens on Dr. Moreau's island. It all comes to a head at this point. You'll see a lot of stuff that you didn't know from the other books. It all comes together in the sixth book. And then that's when I decided to end the series, but I couldn't. So then I brought them back, but a lot of the characters, of course, are dead now. So, because we jumped to the 70s. And there we've got Sarah's granddaughter, who's carried on the tradition of hunting vampires, and she's got her own team in hunting vampires. And now, currently, the newest book just come out last year. It is I think it's the Legacy, and they are going to continue on, because a lot of the people from the previous books, the vampires and stuff, are being brought back. And we are now in the apocalypse age of the Book of M, which was actually spoken of in the third Book of M, that a leader would rise up amongst the werewolves and lead her people to greatness. Well, we see that in the newest book, and then the whole universe expands even more. So the book is a fun, especially if you like vampires, werewolves, zombies. It's got mummies. Everything's in this book, in this series. And I actually re-released on Audible the first 3 volumes in one volume on Audible. It's called M, the Complete Trilogy, or the first trilogy. And I got a new narrator. The first narrator I had for the first 3 books was great. He was fantastic. His voice, he could change his voices for each character. It was like listening to a radio drama. It was fantastic. So if you like vampires, werewolves, that's the book for you. Also, the trilogy is great, because I got a lady from over in England. She narrates it, and she does a fantastic job with the book. She adds her own special spin to it. So I would recommend, if you're into the monsters, that would be one of the books that you would really enjoy. And just keep listening and watching. I'm uploading all the time books from the audio books. I'm putting on there just audio clips. to give you samples of what's out there, but I'm doing these videos just to show what the book's about, what the stories are about. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask, and I will direct you if you're interested in any of the books. As I said, you can find them on in hardback, which is new now. They've just come out in hardback, but I do have paperback, hardback, and my website. It's My World, Arthur Tim Simpson. So just I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about the books, and stay tuned for more. Available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. Thank you for watching.